going to have two more people coming to join us now. John Parfitt from Heathrow, who's at the back of the room coming this way, and Dave Smith from Car and Away. So, welcome.
Hello.
Dave, you have an interesting proposition with Caraway, and John, you're having to deal with increasing capacity through the airport and give a better passenger experience. On the back of what Raoul was saying, would you like to sort of comment and add anything further that you've heard so far?
Yeah, so I think our challenge
from Heathrow's point of view, yeah?
from a Heathrow point of view, one of our challenges is we currently do about 78 million passengers a year through Heathrow, and our aspiration is to continue to grow that to about 90 million passengers a year with our same infrastructure that we've currently got now. Obviously, expansion will come in the future, but we need to continue that growth before expansion comes. And we see the identity scheme as being really key to that. Basically, we need a seamless journey. At the moment, the whole identity assertion is a bottleneck in the process. So we really need a fast and effective digital identity that basically takes that transaction maybe down from something like 20 seconds down to basically 1 to 2 seconds and highly accurate. And that's going to allow the passengers to flow through the process both for departures and arrivals.
And I guess it's all about also providing a better passenger experience, isn't it?
Yes.
With increasing passenger numbers, there's a limit to what you can do in terms of infrastructure.
Yes, I mean it's the passenger experience for us is key. Basically, nobody likes queues. Nobody likes queuing at the airport. Bottlenecks. It's how can you make people flow through in a fast, effective manner, and engage with the technology in a very easy way, because that is really key to it. That's we've been running trials and demonstrations this year, and a lot of our effort is just around how do we make the people interact with the various bits of equipment or the person they're going to see. How do we make that as simple as possible?
What issues have you come across in that? Is it just people and tech, or?
I guess it's. I guess a lot of the trials we're basing at the moment is based upon your physical identity document, which is your passport. And basically, what we're finding is that we can use that to do identity. I mean, anyone familiar with the e-gates in the borders will be used to that process. But what we found is that, that interaction, it takes about 20 seconds, and we only get a 70% success rate in terms of people validating themselves against the passport without help. And that a lot of those problems is just the interaction of the person with the passport physically with the machine, and then knowing to look at a camera and engaging in that process in the right way. So, how you present people to the cameras, whether you can have the system running at the point they come up, and obviously if we can make that digital, then we don't have to worry about the physical presentation.
There's a delay, isn't there, where people sort of position themselves and look at the camera, decide whether they should try and smile or
which way should I put it around?
Yeah.
Have I got it in my pocket?
Yeah.
There's a great example in there as well, that these companies have been producing these cameras, and I've moaned to John about this in the past as well. We're friends, so it's okay. But they're really, really good engineering that goes into these kind of devices and cameras and what have you. And then we ask the customer to look at the camera, and where is it? Look at what camera almost. Yeah. Now, fortunately, we worked out if we put the screen with that instruction next to the camera, then you're looking at it already. But it's technology works, and it works perfectly in the lab. But making it work in the lab, in the live departure lounge is a different thing. Then you mix in people flying in from west coast of the US, slightly hungover or still drunk, really tired, with tired kids, and rational thought just goes out the window. So I would say, this has got to get to the point where it's as easy as opening a door. If you see a door handle, you know how it works. It's got to be that easy. Easier said than done.
That's great. Thank you. Dave, tell us all about Car and Away. I wasn't aware of much about this, so you have a free rein to tell us about it. How has it evolved? What's your business model?
Yes, thank you. You'll all have heard of British Airways in London Heathrow, but not Car and Away, so I appreciate that. We are a startup. We're a peer-to-peer car rental business, and the easiest way for me to decode it to you is that we're effectively like Airbnb for cars at airports. So you fly, you go to the airport, you leave your car with us, you fly off on holiday, we rent your car out while you're away. We work, very importantly, we work in collaboration with airports. What we do for airports is we effectively create virtual car parks for them. So at times of capacity, we move vehicles out and they can resell the spaces and they don't have to build multi-story car parks, so they like that. We also sort problems out for airports who have considerable disruption with their local communities with car parking as well. So that's the model. We're 9 months old. We launched at Gatwick. We're proving the concept to the point that we are very fortunate to be talking to other well-known airports at the moment, and we're talking to Hangar 51 as well. So we're disrupting, but we're disrupting with the authorities. So I look at Airbnb and Uber, fantastic businesses they are, but downstream they found themselves on the wrong side of a lot of arguments, and we're trying to stay on the right side of all the arguments and all the partnerships from the start. So that's the business model, but in terms of how that kind of fits and what it means today is that peer-to-peer is built upon trust. The sharing economy is built upon trust. And so if you are an owner, and I say I'm going to hire your car out to a carefully vetted renter, what does that mean? That renter that comes, I obviously have to perform the checks, or we have to perform the checks on them to make sure that they are good citizens. There's a gentleman I met before from Enterprise here who has a similar issue in that, sadly, cars are used in bad acts. So we want to make sure that these people are good citizens as well. And then secondly, I come to with a great deal of ignorance to this meeting today, but I look at this platform and go, well, this is the unit economics of ID checks now. If those can be reduced, my view is if a platform can create that, boy, will everyone come to that platform, because our business model, we make money from renting the cars out, and our margins are affected by a number of things, one of which is the unit costs of ID checks. So if we can bring all of that together, one platform, it would be fantastic. Yeah, it's an extension, really. It feels to me like there's a few of you that have got an awful lot of responsibility from this, while a load of others are waiting to get the benefits. So.
What do you need identity-wise for it to be more effective or to be effective?
I think from the perspective that keeps coming through is really putting the customer at the heart of it. So, for an owner, for a renter, we want them to be able to onboard quickly. And at the moment, we have to. We're a tech business, so we can. We've got no legacy behind us. But we have to break their user journey because we have to cart them off to a license check. And that in itself is enough to lose a lot of customers. You lose customers when you're onboarding. It's as simple as that. I won't do that. I'll just go back to other well-known traditional car rental business and just do that at the desk.
How do you deal with the insurance issue?
Well, it's our insurance overrides the insurance of the individual. So if you leave a car with us, no matter what happens to your car, dent, tire, anything, crash, God forbid, it gets wrecked, we deal with it, we sort it out. And our insurance partners, so Willis Towers Watson are our brokers, Allianz are our insurance providers, and our insurance will look after everything, won't affect your insurance at all. But we have an absolute responsibility to show to Allianz that we are putting responsible people in cars. And we don't just do that through the ID checks. We also put telematics in every car we rent out from the airport. So that's effectively like a Fitbit that goes in the car, and it means that we know how the renter is performing. So if you are a renter who believes the fastest car on the road is a rental car, we don't want you in our community. And if you start heading off towards countries unspecified, then we can call you back. We know where you are.
Interesting. Let's move on and talk about technology and interoperability. Are there reasons for optimism there? Where do the standards fit in? And is there a need for technology companies to play a role? It's something that I think we sort of talked about preparing for this event. So, talk tech to me. and interoperability?
Well, I guess from our point of view, the real benefits from this come with data sharing. So, as somebody pointed out before, the identity piece has not just got to be a point solution for British Airways. It's got to be throughout your journey. So everything we're doing, basically, we have 80 airlines at Heathrow, and we have to make things common use. So we have to have facilities that will suit all of those airlines. So we need to build on standards. But more than that, I think it's got to go throughout the journey. Got to have an identity scheme that goes between multiple airlines, multiple governments, and multiple airports. It's got to be usable by the industry. I think the massive opportunity would be to make it even more ubiquitous than that, and really have a platform which is akin to sort of a payment type platform, where if you're really putting the customer at the heart of it, they can reuse that identity into multiple environments.
Okay.
I think,
comment on that?
yeah, and with that as well, the benefit kind of comes with its own existence. If you've got one standard that works there, then actually, if I onboard myself for flight, which involves passports and a higher level of assurance, then generally my onboarding is going to be full of more effort. If that's a little ecosystem that just applies to airlines, but not to banking or doing pensions or mortgages or all that sort of stuff, then actually that next onboarding is hard as well, and so on and so forth. If actually, and this is where I think you guys are going to come in as well, your level of assurance might be slightly lower than we need, but you're asking slightly different questions. But actually, if that becomes relevant to me buying alcohol at a supermarket and asserting that I am old enough to do so, then actually it's in my everyday life. So that little kind of step onboards me that far. I'm seeing the benefits, then there's another little step, and so on and so forth. If it's all contributing to that overall thing, then actually the onboarding becomes more relevant to everyday life, meaning that when you get to that higher level, that takes a bit more effort, actually the worth is felt more. We can't just keep it in a little bubble. That's just not going to work.
What are the things that we might be learning from other places around the world? I think we were talking about the traveller verification service in the US, which I know that you're probably both familiar with. Can you kind of tell us a bit about that? And
yeah.
What's going to come from that? What the benefits would be? What the economic benefits would be?
So we've trialled in the US out of LA and Orlando. We started that last year about this sort of time. The US went away and did some sort of sciencey stuff, practiced with lots of different technologies, and worked out what they were going to do around identity. And since then, Customs and Border Protection have actually been very, very open and very, very collaborative about moving this forward. So they've got their own legislation they need to do. But if they got it wrong, they recognize that customers actually would go through an airline or an airport process, then hit another Customs and Border Protection process, which the airline would end up paying for indirectly, and then they go on board an aircraft. What if you brought all that stuff together? So from their point of view, well, we've got a mandate, that's going to cost us loads. You, airline, have got various processes that are affecting your punctuality and your liabilities that are costing you a lot. If we actually come together, then it costs us both significantly less. So in terms of simple economics, that's how it works. We've basically gone out there and trialed that to say, well, does it really work? Test it. Does it work for the customer? And can we be more efficient through all that? And that's what we've been experimenting with. And we found that actually customers love it. Customers can board aircraft at speed without all the faff that we talked about with passports, finding the right page, and so on and so forth. So we're now looking to see how we can expand that. So we're working with John at Heathrow to establish a passportless flight out to the US using that same traveller verification service and being assured of identity as we go through that. So those working examples, we're taking this as the foundation, if you like, of the white paper. Well, what if that US service was the standard? What are the implications to that? If there are no implications and actually it works for everyone, then great, we'll carry on. But actually, if there are interoperability things, which we know there are, how does it play with other systems, then we'll expose that sooner. We'll get the conversation going, and we can start to iterate and experiment more and trial more on that. We're not going to be able to define this up front, saying, right, this is it, and go and implement it. We're just going to fall over doing that. But what we need to do is go on that voyage of discovery, knowing that actually the destination's over here with those economic benefits that we're chasing after, but not prescribing exactly the path through that. We're going to have to discover that through technology, through working with our customers and working with partners and seeing what the vulnerabilities are, what the benefits are, and work it through that way.
And what's the timescale that we might start to see that if you're flying to the US from here?
Well, we're trying to squeeze one in before the end of the year. And then, well, we hope to have a return flight in some way, shape or form early next year. And we're working with Border Force from that point of view about what we can potentially do with that. Trying to keep that out of the Brexit arena as well, as best we can.
Good luck with that, yes. Dave, I mean, talking about what we learned from abroad, is your model being done anywhere else? And what have you learned from anyone else doing it? And
So, I mean, the peer-to-peer car rental is really part of the whole mobility solutions landscape, and things are changing rapidly. So, you know, we say we're here to change the way people own and use cars. There's a very successful business in the US called Getaround, who say we believe every car should be a shared car. There's huge amounts of innovation from the OEMs who are often investing in these types of mobility solutions, and there's huge investment from the traditional rental car companies as they start to reinvent themselves, knowing that what you see on the road is unsustainable. You can't just keep putting more cars on, building more houses without actually trying to address how we move around and what the effects of that are in terms of the environment and the health as well. So there's an awful lot of stuff that's going on in the States. It's really obvious, but it's not an easy one to crack. Peer-to-peer car rental does not work unless a car is available and accessible, which sounds daft, but that really means that in this mobile world that you will ultimately be able to go to any car, and you'll be able to access that car and start that car and leave that car using your mobile phone, and it will record all the necessary data that we and the owner and the renter need to make sure that all parties are happy. So that is that's all very real now, and it's starting to scale.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we were talking about beforehand was that obviously we're talking from a travel sort of point of view, but there's a lot of people in the room from a financial services and insurance and that sort of whole area. And I guess behind everything we talk about from a travel point of view, there is also that backdrop as well, isn't there? You know, we were talking about that beforehand.
Yes. So these things have got to work together really. It goes back to what I was saying before. Actually, if we can make it symbiotic and the assertion of identity we can be replayed in the financial sector, it makes perfect sense, and vice versa. And I think I can't remember who said it now, but this thing about the kind of the signals that kind of drop in that actually help the assurance be there. It's one thing to have, right, I think you are who you are, but actually what else is around that reinforces that identity is correct. So actually there hasn't been any unusual activity, maybe with the phone or with the bank or et cetera, and there's a degree of trust with that. So if you spot an anomaly, then the security services at the airport might say, well, we'll do a bit more of a check here, or stop someone from traveling. So we stop the abuse. And then there's talk about a lot of this credit data being out in dark web and so on and so forth. Actually, well, what can we do in terms of what we're seeing with the real human and passports and identity associated to that as signals that can contribute to verify or otherwise that person's transaction to get a mortgage, say. I think this is where we just need to be kind of symbiotic, really, and be responsible with the data that we're sharing, and let's not lose sight of that, but make it work for the customer well. So I think with all this, my fear as a cynical consumer would be, well, that's all good and well, but when it goes wrong and someone steals my identity, how on earth do I claw it all back? Yeah. I can have the right to kind of change things, but if I can't prove myself in the first place, then I'm a bit stuck. And you start turning into a kind of a Black Mirror episode if you're not careful. But I suppose they're the real concerns and the trust concerns that customers will have in time. And this is where we just need to be able to react to that and have the right procedures and provisions in place that help us deal with that through lots of other sources of data that paint the bigger picture.
John, do you want to come in on that?
I mean, I really like this idea of kind of tiering up the layers here, and I think that the sharing economy, the global sharing economy, so not just cars, it's it's really scaling. You can get hair dryers, lawn mowers, whatever you want from within your street, within your community. It's there. It's all possible. It's all doable if you want to do it. And a lot of people are adopting these behaviours now because, one, it makes sense, and two, they have to. So again, it's a very different check to borrow the lawnmower from down the end of the street to the car, which cost a lot of money. But if you start building those up and the shared economy can do part of that, it all, again, all moving in the same direction.
Excellent. Do we have any questions? There we go.
Theoretically, with the technology available today, I should be able to provide valid ID anywhere in the world without showing my face, my age, or my address. I mean, that's theoretically possible anywhere in the world. But the problem is, I think there's a complete lack of cooperation among governments to enable this. There's a lack of collaboration, there's lack of communication. And I can give you an example, like you were talking about US and LAX, there is this mobile pass thing, which is a wonderful thing. I can go in and out of LAX with, mobile pass. So I can leave LAX as John Smith, and then I can arrive in London as Johann Schmidt from Germany and go through one of those electronic entries. And the UK will never know that Johann Schmidt never left LAX, and the Americans will never know that John Smith actually left LAX. I mean, actually arrived in London. It's actually, there's no sharing of information between these electronic systems whatsoever, as far as I know.
There is a degree, and actually the US are probably a bit further ahead on this. So the US will know who left, as asserted by them as to who entered. There are industry-wide standards around the sharing of advanced passenger information, that's passport information, and a degree of passenger name record information, so that's booking information. That is industry-wide. How that data is used by the government is more pertinent to your point. So some governments receive that data and don't do a lot with it, and they just deal with the person who arrives at the border, and they do it in a manual way. We do need collaboration between government entities. I think what will happen is it will start between some of the big players. So you might well be the US, the UK, Australia and New Zealand are advanced. Canada, South Africa are doing stuff in this area. India are now popping up as well, wanting to do things. So I think you'll get a swell there, and then the other countries will follow along. I know it's possible because we've done it with passports. Now, passports are however many decades old, but they are an international trust framework. They're not quite as trustworthy as they used to be, but it is possible to reach those standards. It's not going to happen overnight, though. That's what you were going to say.
What I'm saying is that if an American leaves LAX, the Americans aren't going to tell the British that an American has left LAX and is arriving in.
So we're challenging that, and we're having those discussions with the US and trying to get the UK on that as well. What we want is not for us, the airline, to be the arbitrator of those things, but actually we need the governments to talk to each other and to have either an industry standard or a bilateral between those governments about what information is necessary to keep their borders secure, and we become just the person who moves the person from A to B and gives customer service.
And the other aspect to that is the trials we're talking with CBP and the Travel Verification Service. One of the threads of that discussion is, well, how can the American government make the immigration process more simple and preferable for the passenger if they've already verified against their service before they leave Heathrow? So there's an incentive for the passenger there. They'll use the service at Heathrow to depart Heathrow, and because of that, their entry to the US will be more straightforward because there'll be a known entity at both ends of that journey. So very much it is in the past it was very siloed, but we're now starting to discuss with government how you make that whole process more joined up.
And there's a little bit of denial in there as well about customers having more than one passport. So if you're dual nationality, you've got two passports, but from a government point of view, they sort of see the person who arrives and that passport that arrives, and that's the identity that's locked to them. So it's much more around the passport than the individual. Those things need to be overcome as well, which you're alluding to, I think, too.
Okay, thank you. We've got some Slido, haven't we? So the question here, the airline is only interested in proof of eligibility, aka boarding pass, whereas immigration is interested in proof of identity of passenger. True or false?
We like the first bit to be true, where we're interested in boarding pass, and all we care about is fraudulent activity. So you make a booking in one name, and then you decide not to fly and you give your ticket to someone else. That could be against our fare rules, for example. The reality is that we do have a liability in terms of the border. So if someone is turned away in Dusseldorf because they can't assert their identity, they haven't got the right documentation or visas, then we as the airline bear the cost for that to repatriate them and any overnight stays that person has to do as well. So there is an impact on us, and there is a liability there. If we get that wrong repeatedly, then there are then quite often further implications as to whether we could even fly to said destination. So you've probably seen it in 10 years ago when probably that's a time where aircraft would turn around over the Atlantic. Virgin had a few, we had one or two as well, where the person was identified as being on board, but not fully cleared by the US, and the US wouldn't allow the aircraft to land. We then have to turn the aircraft around, all 350 people back, take that person off, refuel, so on and so forth. So the potential cost is high. We've kind of sorted out those particular ones, but there is a cost to us. And this is what we're trying to say. Well, should we bear that responsibility fundamentally? Can we be assured before, or can the governments be assured through the right sort of relationship before the person even arrives at the airport that person can arrive? We get then given a signal that says this person is boardable, and then great, we're all good to go.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll take one more here. Why do we talk about identity as if it's a thing? It's only a use case of certified attributes combined in the context of a transaction to get stuff done. Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, in a airport travel context, there is a physical manifestation of this identity as well, and that's probably the key thing. Oh, so I was just saying that in an airport context, there's a physical manifestation of your identity, which is you in person. We tend to use your face as the thing that we verify against. So it's, you know, there's that aspect of it. It's not just about data attributes. We're really interested in you are who you say you are.
Yeah. I mean, you can take the domestic travel that we currently do through Heathrow. There's no identity associated to that. It's purely on the biometric token that's enrolled.
So what we do with that is basically we mix domestic and international passengers within a departure lounge. And what we do is we biometrically verify that if you're departing on a domestic flight, you've either come from the UK landside or you've come through the border in the connections process. You are not allowed on that flight. We don't know anything about you, but we just know that you've been through those processes. Therefore, you have the right to get on that flight and enter the UK at that where it lands without going through immigration again.
Okay. Couple of points here. Vendors have spent 20 years trying to make a market out of identity. When are we going to wake up to the fact that it's a basic human right citizens should control? And I come out saying that we're fixated on monetization instead of the broad levers of friction, risk, cost, and effort, reducing those. You do that and you improve the economics 100 times. So, yeah, some interesting sort of points there.
I'd agree with that. I think you're right.
One more question here, please.
My question is to Raoul at BA, but perhaps John may comment as well. If you're looking for strong digital identities, where do you think the source of the trust should be? Are you looking for government, which you've talked about, or are you looking for the banks? If you look at bank ID schemes across much of Europe, they are trusted. Those identities originated in the banks because of their focus on KYC. What's your view around where these identities should be sourced from? Where is the trust framework that you would accept?
It's a really good question. I think our default position is to flick back to government. That's a government's responsibility to a degree. However, I've heard people comment, actually, it's hard to sue a government. So is a financial institution, which is highly regulated, a better answer to that, where there is a bit more practical liability that sits with them? It's a good question. I think it might well be a combination of several factors. It might be that the government is in charge and has some ownership around the citizenship. That plays a large role. And then the financial institutions and other factors are those signals that reinforce that identity. I think that's where my mind is, at least.
One more question up there, and I don't know whether it's an area that you've looked at. It's something that crops up in almost every conference in terms of a reference. Machine learning, AI. Someone's asked the question. What are you doing about it?
Well, I guess our biometric engines are basically AI engines. So we're not. I guess we're not fixated on deploying a particular technology. So that you'll talk a lot about blockchain, AI, how that. We're just interested in, here's a use case, what is a technology that supports that use case? So we are using AI in various contexts throughout the airport. One is the biometric engine. The other thing is we do a lot of AI machine learning on how people flow through the airport, so we can predict what the future is going to be. So, if the wind over the Atlantic is such a blowing in the wrong direction, how does that affect our operation? What can we see the impact of that? So we do use it, but really it's more about what is the use case.
Yeah.
Does anyone have one question for Dave about how they want to sort of rent their car when next time they go out to the airport? Yeah.
Well, I'm in a slightly strange situation because I live in Slovenia. I own a car in the UK. I hardly ever use it. It's just a wasted asset. So this is for me wonderful. I'll talk to you in the break.
Yeah, we have a similar customer who's now sold his car. So yes.
Thank you very much for taking part and for all your thoughts and for your questions sort of too.